Wealthy CEO mocked new divorced janitor. I'll give you my salary if you translate this. Then fall for her. Tonight was different. Carter Langley himself was still here, pacing behind mahogany doors like a caged animal. His voice carried frustration as he barked orders at his team about a failing merger with Chinese investors. 3 months of negotiations down the drain because nobody could bridge the cultural gap. Have you ever been underestimated because of the kind of job you settled for? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She had kept her diploma hidden in her locker for 3 months, until the day the arrogant billionaire tossed a folder at her like garbage and said, "I bet you can't even read this." The marble floors of Langley Tower's 47th floor gleamed under harsh office lights as Imani pushed her cleaning cart past glass conference rooms filled with men in $1,000 suits. 2 in the morning meant empty hallways and honest conversations bleeding through soundproof doors. Conversations in languages they assumed she'd never understand. Tonight was different. Carter Langley himself was still here, pacing behind mahogany doors like a caged animal. His voice carried frustration as he barked orders at his team about a failing merger with Chinese investors. 3 months of negotiations down the drain because nobody could bridge the cultural gap. Imani squeezed out her mop, the gray water swirling with the day's dirt and her own exhaustion. 14-hour shifts between this job and her morning cleaning gig barely covered rent for the cramped apartment she shared with her 15-year-old daughter. But it was honest work, legal work, safe work. The conference room doors burst open. Carter Langley emerged like a storm front, his silk tie loosened, silver hair disheveled from running his hands through it. At 52, he carried himself with the kind of confidence that money bought and breeding polished. His ice blue eyes swept the hallway, landing on her with a casual dismissal reserved for furniture. "You." His voice cut through the quiet like breaking glass. "Come here." Imani straightened, gripping her mop handle. She'd learned to make herself small, invisible, forgettable. But something in his tone made her shoulders square despite herself. "Sir." He strode toward her, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble she'd just cleaned. In his hand, a thick folder bulged with documents marked with Chinese characters and official seals. "Translate that." He tossed the folder at her feet like scraps to a dog. "I'll give you my entire monthly salary if you even understand one word." His associates gathered behind him, smirking. Patricia Whitman, the senior executive with her perfectly styled silver bob and cruel mouth, laughed outright. "Carter, really? You're going to ask the cleaning lady to read Chinese?" He crawled up Imani's neck. Not anger. She'd trained that out of herself years ago. This was something deeper. Recognition. The same tone her ex-husband used when he destroyed her career. The same dismissal she'd faced when her linguistics degree and diplomatic experience meant nothing to immigration officers who saw only her skin color and current circumstances. She stared at the folder on the floor. Inside those pages lay the merger documents for Langley's biggest international deal. She'd overheard enough to know they were hemorrhaging money because nobody understood the cultural implications buried in the legal language. Have you ever been underestimated because of your job? Because of how you looked? Drop a comment if someone ever assumed you were less than you are. The smart move was to mumble an apology and wheel her cart away. Keep her head down. Stay invisible. But her daughter's face flashed in her mind. Zara, brilliant and beautiful, who believed her mother was a failure because that's what the world reflected back to them every day. Imani bent down and picked up the folder. Her fingers, rough from industrial cleaners and long shifts, traced the embossed seal on the cover. She opened it to the first page and began to read. The Beijing Municipal Corporation hereby acknowledges the terms of partnership with Langley International, contingent upon the following cultural considerations, which must be observed to maintain face and honor in all business dealings. Her voice carried the crisp precision of her diplomatic training as she translated from Mandarin to English without missing a beat. The hallway fell silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant rumble of Los Angeles traffic 47 floors below. She flipped the page and continued in flawless Cantonese. then switched to the legal French annotations in the margins. Each word landed like a small explosion in the stunned silence. When she reached the Russian amendments at the end, Carter's face had gone completely white. The traditional tea ceremony must precede all contract signings, she concluded, closing the folder with steady hands. And the quarterly reports must be presented by someone of equal social standing to show respect. They're not rejecting your business terms, Mr. Langley. They're rejecting your approach. Patricia's laugh died in her throat. The other executives stared like she just performed magic instead of basic translation. But Carter looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. How did you? He stopped himself, his jaw working as he processed what just happened. Who are you? Imani set the folder on the nearest conference table and picked up her mop. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice stayed calm. I'm the woman who cleans your floors, Mr. Langley. Same as yesterday. Same as tomorrow. She turned to push her cart away, but his voice stopped her. Wait. The word carried weight she wasn't expecting. Not a command this time. A request. When she looked back, Carter's ice blue eyes held something she'd never seen directed at her before. Not pity. Not condescension. Recognition. I need to know who you really are. The conference room's recessed lighting created harsh shadows across the shocked faces of his associates. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The other men shuffled their feet and avoided eye contact. But Carter stepped closer, his expensive cologne mixing with the harsh scent of floor cleaner still clinging to her uniform. That wasn't just translation. You understood the cultural context, the business implications. You've done this before. Imani's grip tightened on the mop handle. She'd revealed too much already. Let her guard down for 30 seconds and blown 3 months of careful invisibility. I should get back to work, she said quietly. No. His voice carried the authority of a man used to getting what he wanted. Security can wait. My associates can wait. Right now, I need to understand how a woman with your skills ended up. Holding a mop, she lifted her chin, meeting his stare directly. Life doesn't always go according to plan, Mr. Langley. Sometimes you take whatever work keeps your family fed. Patricia's shrill voice cut through the tension. This is ridiculous, Carter. She's disrupting a board meeting. Security should escort her out immediately. But Carter held up a hand without taking his eyes off Imani. In a minute, the hallway stretched between them like a chasm, his world of marble and mahogany, hers of industrial mops and midnight shifts. But something had shifted in those moments when she translated documents worth millions of dollars with the casual precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. What languages do you speak? He asked. Does it matter? Everything matters now. She counted them off on her fingers like prayer beads. English, French, Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Russian, Arabic. Some German and Portuguese when I'm not too tired to think straight. His associates exchanged glances that mixed amazement with something uglier. Patricia's face twisted with disgust, as if Imani's competence was somehow offensive. Where did you learn them? Paris, Georgetown, the State Department. Each answer was a small betrayal of the careful anonymity she'd built. Before what? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Before her marriage imploded in spectacular public failure. Before her ex-husband convinced everyone who mattered that she was unstable, unreliable, untrustworthy. Before she lost her security clearance, her career, her identity. Before she became invisible. Before I ended up here, she said simply. Carter studied her face like he was reading a contract with his company's future written in the fine print. Whatever he saw there made his decision for him. Patricia, reschedule the Beijing meeting for tomorrow afternoon. I want a full cultural briefing prepared. He turned to his other associates. The rest of you can go home. We'll reconvene in the morning. Carter, you can't be serious, Patricia protested. She's the cleaning staff. This is highly irregular. So, is losing a $50 million deal because we're too arrogant to listen. His voice carried the edge that had built his empire. Go home, Patricia. When the elevator doors closed on the last of his associates, the hallway fell quiet except for the distant hum of the city below. Carter and Imani stood facing each other across the marble expanse, the folder of documents between them like evidence of a crime. "I followed you to the elevator," he said quietly. "I need to know who you really are." When she picked up that folder and began reading aloud in flawless Mandarin, the entire boardroom fell silent. But it wasn't just shock in Carter's eyes. It was something far more dangerous. Recognition. He built an empire on reading people, until the night a janitor in a polyester uniform made him question everything he thought he knew about power. Carter Langley had made his first million by age 25 and his first billion by 40. He understood leverage, market psychology, and human nature with the precision of a surgeon. But standing in the empty hallway at 2:30 in the morning, watching a woman in a cleaning uniform discuss international trade law like she'd written it herself, he felt like a rookie making his first deal. "The Beijing Corporation isn't playing games," Imani continued, her voice carrying an authority that made his associates shuffle their feet like schoolboys. "When they insist on traditional protocols, they're testing whether you see them as equals or just another acquisition." Patricia Whitman's face had gone red with indignation. At 62, she climbed the corporate ladder when women had to fight for every rung, and she had no patience for what she saw as Carter's sudden fascination with the help. "This is absurd," Patricia hissed. "She's disrupting a critical business meeting. Security should remove her immediately." But Carter couldn't stop staring at the way Imani held herself, straight back despite the shapeless uniform, her dark eyes sharp with intelligence he'd somehow missed for 3 months. How was that possible? He prided himself on noticing everything, especially talent that could benefit his company. "Keep talking," he told Imani, ignoring Patricia's sharp intake of breath. "The tea ceremony isn't just ceremony," Imani explained, opening the folder to a page covered in Chinese characters. "It's about establishing hierarchy and respect. They want to know if you'll honor their customs or bulldoze through with American arrogance." She flipped to another section, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "In this clause about quarterly reports, they're requiring presentations from someone of equivalent social standing. Not your junior executives, not your translators, someone they consider your equal." Michael Torres, Carter's VP of International Relations, finally found his voice. "How do you know all this? I mean, no offense, but..." He gestured vaguely at her uniform. "But how does the cleaning lady know more about Chinese business culture than your international relations team?" Imani's smile held no warmth. "Maybe because I actually live there, work there, negotiated trade agreements with officials who would eat your team for breakfast." The conference room's recessed lighting created harsh shadows across shocked faces as Imani calmly explained the merger's cultural implications in 3 languages, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands that Carter noticed now. The only sign that this moment mattered to her as much as it did to him. "Impossible, Patricia Snapped. If you had that kind of background, you wouldn't be mopping floors." Something flickered across Imani's face, pain quickly buried. "Life has a way of humbling people, Mrs. Whitman. Surely someone in your position understands that success and failure are often separated by circumstances beyond our control." The dig landed perfectly. Patricia's jaw tightened, but she couldn't argue. She'd fought her own battles against men who thought her gender disqualified her from leadership. Carter stepped closer, drawn by the careful way Imani deflected personal questions while demonstrating expertise that could save his company millions. "What else are we missing?" "Everything." Imani turned to face him directly, and he caught a glimpse of the woman she must have been before whatever brought her here. Confident, commanding, dangerous. "You're approaching this like a Western acquisition when it's actually a face-saving exercise for officials who need to show their superiors they extracted concessions from American businessmen." She pointed to a paragraph he'd skimmed over as legal boilerplate. "This isn't about money. It's about respect. They want public acknowledgement of Chinese technological superiority in at least one area of the partnership. A ceremonial gesture that costs you nothing, but gives them something to report back to Beijing." Michael leaned forward, his earlier skepticism replaced by fascination. "And you know this how?" "Because I spent 18 months in Beijing negotiating similar agreements for the State Department. before my security clearance was revoked, before my career ended, before I became invisible. The words hung in the air like a confession. Carter felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together. Her linguistic skills, her cultural knowledge, the way she carried herself despite circumstances that should have broken her spirit. What's the most satisfying moment you've ever proven someone wrong? When did you get to show your true abilities? Share your victory story below. Security clearance revoked? Patricia's voice sharpened with predatory interest. What kind of clearance? Imani's expression shuddered. The kind that doesn't matter anymore. But Carter saw the wall slam down behind her eyes. The same careful neutrality she'd worn while cleaning his office for 3 months. Whatever happened to end her diplomatic career had been traumatic enough to make her retreat into invisibility. The Beijing deal, he said, steering the conversation back to safer ground. If we implement these cultural protocols, will they sign? If you do it right, they'll be insulted if you don't let them sign. Imani's professional mask slipped back into place. But it has to be authentic. They'll smell condescension from across the Pacific. James Wright, Carter's chief financial officer, had been silent throughout the exchange, but now he cleared his throat. And you could guide us through this process? The question electrified the hallway. Carter watched Imani's face carefully, noting the way her breathing changed, the subtle straightening of her shoulders. She wanted this, needed it, but she was also terrified of it. I should get back to work, she said quietly, reaching for her mop. Wait. Carter's voice carried more authority than he'd intended. I'm not done with this conversation. Patricia stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble. Carter, this is highly irregular. We can't what? Can't recognize talent when it's been right under our noses for 3 months? He turned to face his senior executive, the woman who'd been like a second mother to him since his parents died. Can't admit that maybe our approach has been wrong. She's the cleaning staff, Patricia said through gritted teeth. She's a former State Department negotiator who speaks 7 languages and just solved our biggest deal in 5 minutes. Carter's voice rose with each word. I don't care if she showed up in a hazmat suit. If she can save this company $50 million, I'm listening. The elevator dinged softly, and David Chun, Carter's head of security, stepped into the hallway. His eyes took in the scene. Executives clustered around a cleaning lady holding a folder of classified documents, and his hand moved instinctively toward his radio. Mr. Langley? Is there a problem here? Carter looked at Imani, who had gone perfectly still beside her cleaning cart. One word from him would end this moment, send her back to anonymity and midnight shifts. But something in her eyes, pride warring with desperation, made his decision for him. No problem, David. Actually, could you escort Mrs. Whitman and the others to the parking garage? I need to continue this meeting privately. Patricia's face went white with shock. You're dismissing us? For her, I'm prioritizing the Beijing deal above office politics. Carter's tone brooked no argument. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning with a new strategy. As security escorted his stunned associates to the elevator, Carter found himself alone in the hallway with a woman whose presence challenged everything he thought he knew about competence, class, and his own ability to judge character. The silence stretched between them until Imani finally spoke. This is a mistake, Mr. Langley. Why? Because people like me don't get second chances in places like this. We get used up and thrown away when we're no longer convenient. Her honesty hit him like cold water. Is that what happened before? The pain that crossed her face was there and gone so quickly he almost missed it. What happened before is why I'm holding a mop instead of negotiating your contracts. Carter studied her face, noting the exhaustion lines around her eyes, the careful way she held herself like someone expecting the next blow. Whatever had destroyed her diplomatic career had done more than end her job. It had convinced her she was disposable. Help me fix the Beijing deal, he said quietly. Not as my employee, as my consultant. I don't have the right clothes for your boardroom. I don't care about clothes. I care about results. Imani looked down at the folder in her hands, then back at him. And when your board finds out you're taking advice from the cleaning lady, when the media gets hold of this story, what happens to me then? The question hung between them like a challenge. Carter realized she wasn't just asking about professional consequences. She was asking if he'd protect her when the backlash came. If he'd stand by her when his world inevitably rejected her presence. I guess we'll find out together. As security escorted her out for disturbing executives, Carter made a decision that would change both their lives. He followed her to the elevator. "Wait," he called. "I need to know who you really are." She'd spent 3 months invisible in his building, until the night he cornered her in the emergency stairwell and demanded to know why a woman with her mind was holding a mop. The elevator doors slid shut with Patricia's horrified face disappearing behind brushed steel. Imani stood beside her cleaning cart, folders still clutched in her hands, wondering what kind of madness had possessed her to reveal so much to a man who held her minimum wage job in his perfectly manicured hands. "We need to talk," Carter said, his voice echoing in the empty hallway. "I think we've talked enough for one night." Imani pushed her cart toward the service elevator, but his next words stopped her cold. "My company is hemorrhaging money because my team can't navigate basic cultural protocols. You just diagnose the problem and outline the solution in 5 minutes. If you walk away now, we both lose." She turned to face him, this billionaire CEO who somehow made Italian suits look casual and commanded rooms full of powerful men with the ease of someone born to privilege. "What exactly do you think I can lose, Mr. Langley?" "My prestigious career mopping your floors. Your chance to get back what you lost." The words hit like a physical blow. "You don't know what I lost." "Then tell me." Imani laughed, but the sound held no humor. "Right here, in your hallway where anyone could hear, where your security cameras are recording every word." Carter glanced up at the discreet surveillance equipment mounted near the ceiling, then back at her face. Without a word, he walked to the emergency stairwell door and pushed it open. "No cameras in here. Fire code." The stairwell echoed with distant city noise, concrete and steel creating an intimate cage where his expensive cologne mixed with the harsh scent of cleaning chemicals on her uniform. She followed him inside, though every instinct screamed that this was dangerous territory. Not because he might hurt her physically, but because he was asking questions that could unravel 3 years of careful rebuilding. "Talk to me," he said, leaning against the concrete wall. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, he looked younger somehow, less polished. More human. "About what?" "My glorious past as a diplomatic failure? My expertise in destroying my own career." Imani set the folder on the metal stair railing, her hands suddenly needing something to do. "Trust me, Mr. Langley, it's not an inspiring story. I'm not looking for inspiration. I'm looking for understanding." She studied his face, searching for signs of the cruel curiosity she'd learned to recognize. Men who collected broken women like trophies, who fed on sob stories and damaged histories. But Carter's ice blue eyes held something different. Professional interest, yes, but also something that looked almost like respect. "You really want to know?" "Everything." Imani took a breath that tasted like industrial disinfectant and regret. "I met my ex-husband at a diplomatic reception in Paris. Jean-Luc Moreau, French businessman with connections to African trade markets. Charming, sophisticated, everything I thought I wanted." Her voice echoed off the concrete walls as she continued. "We married after 6 months. I was 28, stupid in love, and convinced I could have both, the career and the fairy tale marriage." Carter said nothing, but she saw him processing information like he was reading a contract with hidden clauses. Jean-Luc had debts. Gambling debts, business debts, debts to people who don't accept payment plans. When my diplomatic salary couldn't cover his lifestyle, he started suggesting I share classified information. Just small things at first. Trade negotiation strategies. Cultural intelligence reports. The admission hung between them like a confession in a church. Imani had never spoken these words aloud to another person, but something about the stairwell's isolation made truth feel safer than silence. "And you did it. God help me, yes. Not state secrets, nothing that endangered lives, but enough to compromise my integrity. Enough to destroy my career when he decided to trade my reputation for his own plea bargain." Carter's jaw tightened. He turned you in? Worse, he convinced everyone I was the mastermind, that I was using my position to sell information, and he was just the innocent victim of my manipulation. Imani's laugh held 3 years of bitter hindsight. A French businessman's word against a black American woman with questionable judgment? Guess who the review board believed? The fluorescent light buzzed overhead like an angry insect. Carter pushed away from the wall, moving closer to her in the confined space. That's why you lost your security clearance. That's why I lost everything. Career, reputation, savings account drained by legal fees. The State Department threw me under the bus so fast I got whiplash. By the time the divorce was final, I was unemployable in any field that required background checks. So you came to Los Angeles. I came to Los Angeles with my 15-year-old daughter, 2 suitcases, and enough pride to choke on. Minimum wage jobs don't require security clearances, and night shifts mean I could be home when Zara gets out of school. Carter absorbed this information with the same focused attention he'd given her translation of the Chinese documents. Your daughter. Where's her father? Dead since she was 3. Car accident in D.C. Imani's voice softened. Jean-Luc never legally adopted her, which was the only mercy in that whole mess. At least she kept my name and my benefits. The stairwell fell quiet except for the distant hum of the building's mechanical systems. Carter stood close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, could smell the expensive soap he used. This close, she could also see the calculation happening behind his composed expression. Have you ever had to start over from nothing? When life forced you to take work beneath your qualifications? Tell me about your comeback story. The Beijing deal, he said finally. You could salvage it. I could guide you through the cultural protocols, yes. But that doesn't solve your bigger problem, which is your team doesn't respect expertise that doesn't come with the right pedigree. They'll sabotage any advice I give because it threatens their authority. Carter's smile was sharp as a blade. Let me worry about my team. And when this goes public, when reporters start digging into the cleaning lady who suddenly appeared in your boardroom, my history will destroy your reputation along with what's left of mine. That's my risk to take. Imani shook her head. You don't understand. I'm not just professionally damaged. I'm radioactive. Anyone who associates with me gets contaminated by proximity. Is that what you believe? Or what Jean-Luc convinced you to believe? The question hit like a slap. She'd spent 3 years accepting the narrative that she was poison, that her judgment was fundamentally flawed, that she deserved whatever crumbs the world threw her way. It doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what happened. What happened is that you made mistakes trying to save a marriage to a man who was using you. That doesn't make you unemployable. It makes you human. His certainty rattled something loose inside her chest. You're risking $50 million on someone who already proved she can't be trusted. I'm risking $50 million on someone who learned hard lessons and came out stronger. There's a difference. The stairwell door opened 1 floor above them, and footsteps echoed against concrete. Their voices would carry if they kept talking, but neither moved to leave. Help me fix this deal, Carter said quietly. Not as charity, as a business partnership. I don't have credentials anymore. No security clearance, no diplomatic status, no. You have knowledge. You have experience. You have skills my company desperately needs. He paused, studying her face. What else do you need? The honest answer was respect, recognition, the chance to use her mind for something more meaningful than industrial cleaning. But admitting that felt too much like begging. I need to know this isn't some rich man's whim that you'll abandon when it gets complicated. Fair enough. Carter reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Not his usual corporate card. This one was simple, cream-colored stock with only his name and personal phone number. Call me tomorrow. We'll discuss terms. Imani took the card, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. The contact sent an unexpected jolt up her arm. Not attraction, she told herself, just the shock of human contact in a life that had become increasingly isolated. Terms, consulting contract, competitive rate, full credit for your contributions to the Beijing deal. And when your board objects, they'll object to a lot of things I do. That's what makes me the CEO and them the board. The footsteps above them faded as whoever had entered the stairwell continued upward. In the returning silence, Imani found herself studying Carter's face, looking for signs of the trap she was sure existed somewhere in his offer. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I hate losing, and because you're wasted on floor maintenance." His honesty was almost as surprising as his offer. She'd expected platitudes about opportunity and second chances, not this blunt assessment of mutual benefit. "I haven't said yes, but you haven't said no." When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of loss and determination. "You want to know who I am? I'm someone who fell from grace and learned to climb back up one floor at a time. The question is, can you handle that truth?" He offered her everything she'd lost: respect, recognition, a salary that matched her mind. But the price was working directly under the man who made her heart race and her guard rise in equal measure. Imani stared at Carter's business card for 3 days. The cream-colored stock felt expensive between her fingers, heavier than regular paper, like the weight of possibility itself. She kept it in her uniform pocket during her shifts, a secret talisman that made the fluorescent lights seem less harsh and the industrial disinfectant smell less overwhelming. But she didn't call. Tuesday night, she cleaned the 32nd floor while Carter's team held an emergency meeting about the Beijing crisis. She could hear their voices through the conference room glass, frustrated, desperate, throwing around ideas that would only make things worse. Michael Torres suggested hiring an expensive consulting firm. Patricia Whitman recommended walking away from the deal entirely. None of them mentioned the cleaning lady who had diagnosed their problem in 5 minutes. Wednesday morning brought another eviction notice. The bright yellow paper taped to her apartment door felt like a slap in the face, especially with Mrs. Chun from 3B watching through her peephole. 60 days behind on rent, despite working 16-hour days between 2 cleaning jobs. Zara's school expenses had eaten through her savings, and her daughter's asthma medication cost more than their grocery budget. "Mom!" Zara appeared in the doorway of their tiny kitchen, her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 15, she had inherited Imani's sharp intelligence and none of her mother's current resignation to circumstances. "What's that paper about?" "Nothing important, baby. Just apartment management being dramatic about paperwork." Zara's dark eyes, so much like her father's, narrowed with suspicion. "Are we going to have to move again?" The question cut deep because they both knew the answer. This was their 3rd apartment in Los Angeles, each one smaller and cheaper than the last. Zara had learned not to make close friends because they never stayed anywhere long enough for relationships to take root. "We'll figure out," Imani said, which wasn't a lie exactly, just hope dressed up as certainty. After Zara left for school, Imani sat at their second-hand kitchen table and spread out her bills like cards in a losing poker hand. Rent, utilities, Zara's medication, groceries, student loan payments from her master's degree, the one that qualified her for jobs she could never get again. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how she rearranged them. Carter's business card lay beside the stack of bills like an accusation. Thursday night, she was mopping the 47th floor again when she heard her name. Imani. She turned to find Carter standing in the hallway, still in his suit despite the late hour. His tie was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and he looked tired in a way that expensive grooming couldn't hide. "Mr. Langley." She straightened, suddenly conscious of her appearance. The shapeless uniform, the industrial rubber gloves, the way exhaustion had carved lines around her eyes. "You didn't call." "No, sir. The Beijing meeting is tomorrow afternoon. Without your guidance, we're going to lose $50 million and probably our relationship with the largest manufacturing consortium in Asia." His bluntness was somehow more respectful than false politeness would have been. "I'm sure your team will find a solution. My team is planning to offer the Chinese delegation a tour of Universal Studios and dinner at a steakhouse in Beverly Hills." Carter's smile held no humor. "Does that sound like cultural sensitivity to you?" Despite herself, Imani winced. "That's actually offensive. Spectacularly offensive. The kind of offensive that gets reported in Chinese business journals as an example of American arrogance." They stood facing each other across the marble hallway, the space between them feeling charged with unspoken possibilities. Imani gripped her mop handle tighter, using it as an anchor against the temptation to say yes to something that felt too good to be real. "Why haven't you called?" Carter asked quietly. "Because I'm terrified. Because every time someone has offered me a second chance, it's come with strings attached. Because I can't afford to hope and lose again. Because consulting contracts don't pay eviction notices," she said instead. "I need steady work, not temporary projects." Who said it was temporary? The question hung between them like a bridge she was afraid to cross. "Mr. Langley." "Carter, and I'm not offering you a consulting contract for one deal. I'm offering you a position with my company. Full-time, full benefits, salary commensurate with your expertise." Imani's knees went weak. She'd been living on minimum wage for so long that the idea of financial stability felt like fantasy. "What position?" "Director of International Cultural Relations." "New department." "Your department." Her laugh came out shaky. "You're making up job titles. I'm making up solutions to problems my company faces every day. The Beijing deal is just the beginning. We're expanding into African markets, Middle Eastern partnerships, South American ventures. I need someone who understands that business isn't just about numbers and contracts." He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne again, something clean and expensive that made her think of safety. "I need someone who speaks the languages and understands the cultures. Someone who won't embarrass me by offering tea to a delegation that considers it an insult. And you think I'm that person? I know you're that person. The question is whether you're brave enough to believe it." His certainty was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Imani had spent 3 years convinced she was unemployable in any meaningful capacity, that her judgment was too damaged to trust. The idea that someone might value her expertise enough to build a department around it felt like touching an electric fence. He offered her everything she'd lost: respect, recognition, a salary that matched her mind, but the price was working directly under the man who made her heart race and her guard rise in equal measure. "What's the salary?" she asked, hating how desperate the question sounded. Carter named a figure that made her grip the mop handle to keep from falling over. It was more than she'd made at the State Department, more than she'd ever imagined earning again. "That's generous. That's market rate for someone with your qualifications." "My qualifications include a revoked security clearance and a destroyed reputation." "Your qualifications include advanced degrees, diplomatic experience, and cultural expertise that my company needs. The rest is just history." When someone offers you everything you've lost, how do you know if it's real or just another way to fall? "Tell me about a time you had to choose between safety and possibility." Imani closed her eyes, trying to process what he was offering. A real salary meant keeping their apartment. Meant Z. She said yes to dinner and found herself in the back of his Tesla, city lights blurring past, wondering when a business celebration became something that felt dangerously like a date. Carter had suggested Perch, the rooftop restaurant downtown where celebrities went to be seen. But as the elevator climbed 17 stories above the chaos of Los Angeles, Imani realized this wasn't about being seen. This was about seeing each other. The restaurant floated above downtown like a jeweled platform in space, the city spreading below them in waves of amber and gold. But neither looked at the view. They were too busy discovering each other. "Tell me about France," he said, pouring wine that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "What was it like being a diplomat at 28? "Terrifying," she admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. "I walked into the embassy in Paris thinking I knew everything about international relations. Turns out, textbooks don't teach you how to read a room full of men who think you're there to serve coffee." He laughed, but not the polite chuckle she expected. Real laughter that crinkled his eyes. "Sounds familiar. My first board meeting, I was 25 and thought my last name was qualification enough. One of the executives asked if I was there to take notes. What did you do?" "Made the worst presentation of my life and learned to work twice as hard as everyone else." He leaned back, studying her. "But you found your footing, didn't you? Your confidence in that boardroom today wasn't an act. Wine warmed her cheeks, or maybe it was the way he looked at her, like she was fascinating instead of broken. Paris taught me that respect isn't given. It's earned, demanded, or taken. I learned to take it. And then, the question hung between them, heavy with everything she hadn't told him. About Marcus, her ex-husband, who'd twisted her success into scandal. About the lies that followed her across an ocean and cost her everything she'd built. Then I learned that sometimes people will destroy what they can't control, she said quietly. Even people who claim to love you. His hand moved across the table, covering hers. Not possessive, just present. I'm sorry someone hurt you. The simple words hit harder than grand gestures. When was the last time someone had just acknowledged her pain without trying to fix it or minimize it? What about you? She asked, deflecting. Silver spoon life must have been easier. You'd think. His thumb traced across her knuckles, sending electricity up her arm. Money buys comfort, not happiness. My parents died when I was 15. Car accident un PCH. Patricia, my aunt, raised me, but she never let me forget I was inheriting something I didn't earn. That's why you work so hard. That's why I work angry. His eyes met hers. Until today. Today, watching you command that room, I remembered what it feels like to work inspired. The waiter refilled their glasses, but neither moved to drink. The space between them crackled with something electric, dangerous. Amani, he said her name like he was tasting it. This isn't just about work anymore, is it? She should say yes. Should maintain professional boundaries and remember that men like him collected women like trophies. Should remember that she had a daughter to protect and bills to pay and couldn't afford to complicate the first good thing that had happened to her in years. Instead, she leaned forward. No, it's not. As they stood on his penthouse balcony, Los Angeles glittering below, she turned to face him and found him closer than expected. The city noise faded to whispers, and all she could hear was her heartbeat and his breathing. Amani, he whispered, her name like prayer on his lips, and she realized she was about to cross a line that would change everything. When was the last time someone really listened to your story? When did you feel truly seen by another person? Tell me about that moment of connection. The kiss was supposed to be goodbye, a perfect ending to an impossible evening. But when his lips touched hers, she forgot every reason why falling for her boss was a terrible idea. His mouth was warm, questioning at first, then hungry when she responded. Her hands found his chest, feeling his heartbeat race beneath expensive fabric. This was madness. This was exactly the kind of mistake that had destroyed her life before. She didn't care. Are you sure? He breathed against her lips, and the fact that he asked, that he gave her space to choose, made her want him more. Stop talking, she whispered and pulled him closer. His penthouse bedroom faced west, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Pacific Ocean beyond the city lights. She'd never seen anything like it, but she wasn't looking at the view. She was watching him watch her, the way his eyes darkened as she reached for the buttons of her blouse. You're beautiful, he said, voice rough. So damn beautiful. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be desired instead of needed. Marcus had wanted her as decoration, proof of his good taste. Carter looked at her like she was art come to life. When he touched her, his hands were reverent, exploring like he was memorizing every curve. She arched against him, surprised by her own boldness, by how right this felt despite every logical reason it was wrong. They moved together with desperate urgency, months of professional tension finally finding release. He whispered her name like a promise, and she forgot about consequences, about tomorrow, about everything except the way he made her feel powerful and cherished all at once. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets that probably cost more than her car payment, her head on his chest as his fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder. Stay, he murmured into her hair. Please. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But dawn was creeping across the sky, painting the penthouse in shades of rose and gold, and reality was knocking at the door like an unwelcome visitor. I have to get Zara ready for school, she said, already pulling away. He sat up, running a hand through rumpled hair. Amani, about what this means. It doesn't have to mean anything. she interrupted, reaching for her clothes. We're adults. These things happen. But even as she said it, she knew she was lying. This felt like everything. Dawn painted the penthouse in shades of rose and gold, the city awakening 40 floors below, but she was already gathering her clothes, rebuilding walls that one night of passion had demolished. She dressed quickly, efficiently, not looking at him sprawled across the bed like some kind of fallen angel. If she looked, she might stay. If she stayed, she might start believing in fairy tales again. Imani, his voice stopped her at the door. Don't run from this. She turned, memorizing the sight of him. Hair messed from her fingers, sheet tangled around his waist, eyes that saw too much. I'm not running, she lied. I'm being practical. The elevator ride down felt like falling. 47 floors of questioning every choice, every kiss, every whispered word. By the time she reached the parking garage, she'd convinced herself it was a mistake. A beautiful, earth-shattering mistake that couldn't happen again. Monday morning, she wore her most professional suit, navy blue, conservative cut, armor against her own desires. She spoke to him only about business, answered his questions with clipped efficiency, avoided eye contact that might crack her resolve. At the office Monday morning, she wore her most professional suit and spoke to him only about business, but when he slid a handwritten note across her desk during the team meeting, her resolve cracked. We need to talk. Not about contracts, about us. Have you ever done something that felt right in the moment, but terrified you the next day? When passion conflicts with logic, which do you choose? Share your honest thoughts. The leaked photos hit the company blog at exactly 9:17 a.m. Carter's hand on her back as they left the restaurant, her head thrown back in laughter, and by 9:30, senior executive Patricia Whitman was demanding her immediate termination. Imani stared at her computer screen, watching the comments pile up beneath the grainy images. Someone had photographed them at Perch, caught the moment when Carter had leaned close to whisper something that made her laugh. In the photo, they looked like lovers, which she supposed they were. Diversity hire getting special treatment, read one comment. Guess we know how she really earned that promotion, said another. The words burned, each one designed to reduce her accomplishments to something cheap and transactional. Her desk phone rang. Carter's assistant, voice tight with stress. Ms. Morrison? Ms. Whitman would like to see you in conference room A immediately. The executive conference room felt like a tribunal, mahogany walls closing in as Patricia's voice cut through the air like ice, reducing Imani's accomplishments to whispered speculation about her motives and methods. Patricia Whitman sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court. Perfectly coiffed silver hair, Chanel suit, smile sharp enough to cut glass. She'd built her reputation as the woman who cleaned up messes, and apparently, Imani was the latest mess requiring attention. Ms. Morrison, Patricia's voice could freeze hell. I think we need to discuss your relationship with Mr. Langley. There's nothing to discuss. My work speaks for itself. Does it? Patricia slid a manila folder across the polished table. Because from where I sit, it looks like you've been trading favors instead of earning results. Imani opened the file. Inside were printed screenshots of every deal she'd negotiated, every success she'd achieved, with handwritten notes questioning her methods. Had she used seduction to close the Japanese contract? Did her friendship with Carter influence his decision-making? This is ridiculous, Imani said, but her voice sounded smaller than she intended. Is it a janitor who suddenly becomes an international consultant? A woman who goes from mopping floors to dining at LA's most exclusive restaurants? Come now, Ms. Morrison. Even you have to admit it looks convenient. The door opened and Carter walked in, his face dark with anger. Patricia, what the hell is this? Damage control, his aunt replied coolly. Your little romance is becoming a liability. The board is concerned about the optics. The board should be concerned about our profits, which are up 30% since Imani joined the team. Profits built on what foundation? Patricia's smile was poison wrapped in politeness. When this relationship ends, and it will, what happens to our international contracts? What happens when the woman with access to all our trade secrets decides she wants revenge? Imani felt the familiar sting of being reduced to her worst possible interpretation. Not the woman who spoke 7 languages, not the diplomat who navigated international crises, but a scorned woman with dangerous knowledge. That's enough. Carter's voice carried the authority of ownership, but Patricia wasn't impressed. Is it because I have a meeting with the board in 1 hour and they're going to ask me what I recommend? I can tell them this was a momentary lapse in judgment that's been corrected, or I can tell them their CEO is making decisions with his heart instead of his head. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Imani looked between them, seeing the family resemblance for the first time. The same stubborn jaw, the same calculating eyes. But where Carter's calculations included her humanity, Patricia's reduced her to numbers on a spreadsheet. Patricia's final ultimatum landed like a blade. Choose, Carter. The company your family built, or your little project. But you can't have both. The silence that followed felt like the end of everything they'd begun to build. Have you ever been judged for who you loved, or who loved you? When people question your worth because of someone else's interest, tell me how you handled the judgment. While Carter fought his board, Imani's phone rang with an offer that would flip the script entirely. Harrison and Associates wanted her expertise, and they were willing to pay triple what Carter offered. The call came at 6 p.m., just as she was packing up her desk for what might be the last time. Robert Harrison himself, not some recruiter. The man whose firm had rejected Carter's merger bid 6 months ago. Ms. Morrison, I hope you don't mind the direct approach. Harrison's voice was warm honey over steel. I've been following your work with Langley Industries. Impressive results. Thank you. She glanced around the office that had become her sanctuary, wondering who was listening. I'll cut to the chase. I need someone with your skills for our international division. Full benefits, signing bonus, and a salary that reflects your actual worth. Not what someone thinks you deserve because of your circumstances. The number he quoted made her sit down hard. Triple her current salary. Enough to move Zara to a better school district, to stop choosing between groceries and utilities, to finally breathe. Why me, she asked. Because you closed the Yamamoto deal in 3 days when my team spent 6 months getting nowhere. Because you understand that business is about relationships, not just contracts. And frankly, because Langley doesn't appreciate what he has. The Harrison and Associates building gleamed like a chrome fortress across the street from Langley Tower. Its promise of respect and recognition calling to her like a siren song, while Carter's world crumbled behind glass walls. She hung up without committing, but the seed was planted. For the first time in months, she had leverage. She had choice. Carter appeared at her office door an hour later, looking like he'd aged years in a single day. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loose, his eyes carrying the weight of impossible decisions. The board meeting was rough, he said, closing the door behind him. How rough? Patricia convinced them you're a security risk, that I'm compromised. He moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. They want you gone, Imani. And if I don't comply, they'll remove you as CEO. They'll destroy everything my parents built. His reflection in the glass looked haunted. 5 generations of Langleys. And I'm the one who brings it all down for a woman who what? The words came out sharper than she intended. Who seduced the poor, innocent billionaire? Who manipulated her way into your bed and your boardroom? He turned, eyes flashing. That's not what I was going to say. Wasn't it? Because that's what everyone else is saying. That's what your precious board believes. I don't give a damn what they believe. Don't you? She stood, fury finally breaking through professional composure. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're going to sacrifice me to save your family legacy. Just like Marcus did. The comparison hit him like a physical blow. I'm nothing like your ex-husband. Aren't you? When the pressure gets too high, when your reputation is on the line, what happens to the woman who trusted you? They faced each other across the office. Months of careful professionalism shattered. She could see the moment he made his choice, could read it in the set of his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened. I won't let them destroy you, he said quietly, even if it costs me everything. Pretty words. But Harrison and Associates just offered me triple my salary and full autonomy. No board oversight, no whispered gossip, No choosing between my career and my dignity. His face went white. You're leaving. She placed a resignation letter on his desk with hands that didn't shake, but when he looked up at her with raw desperation in his eyes, she realized leaving wouldn't just destroy his business. It might break his heart. When you hold the power to choose your own destiny, how do you decide? Between security and respect, between love and independence? What would you choose? The Harrison offer sat on her kitchen table like a golden ticket to freedom. But when Carter appeared at her door at midnight, soaked from the rain and stripped of all his CEO armor, everything changed. She'd been staring at the contract for 3 hours, pen in hand, unable to sign. The money was incredible. The respect was guaranteed. The independence was everything she'd fought to rebuild since Marcus destroyed her life in France. So why couldn't she write her name? The knock came just after midnight, sharp and desperate. She opened the door to find Carter dripping wet, his expensive suit dark with rain, hair plastered to his forehead. He looked nothing like the polished executive who commanded boardrooms. He looked like a man coming apart. I resigned, he said without preamble, effective immediately. What? She pulled him inside, grabbing a towel from the linen closet. Carter, you can't. I can and I did. He took the towel, but didn't use it, just stood there dripping on her hardwood floor. 5 generations of Langleys, and I'm the one who walks away. You know what? I'm good with that. Rain drummed against her apartment windows as he stood in her modest living room, his expensive suit dark with water, looking smaller somehow in her space. Not diminished, but human size for the first time. Your aunt will destroy you for this. Let her try. His eyes were fierce, uncompromising. She gave me an ultimatum, so I made my choice. I choose you, Imani. I choose us. Even if it cost me everything else. She stared at him, this man who'd given up billions rather than sacrifice her to corporate politics. You're insane. Probably. He stepped closer, water still dripping from his hair. But I'm also free. For the first time in my life, I'm free to choose what matters instead of what's expected. What about your parents' legacy? The company they built. They built it with love and integrity. Patricia turned it into a weapon. Maybe it's time for something new. His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize were falling. Maybe it's time for us to build something together. The Harrison contract mocked her from the kitchen table. Security, independence, everything she'd worked for since her world collapsed. I got another offer today, she whispered. I know. Harrison's been circling like a vulture since the story broke. His smile was sad, but not surprised. Triple salary, I'm guessing. Full autonomy? Everything I can't give you right now. How did you? Because he's smart, and you're brilliant, and everyone in the city knows I'm an idiot if I let you walk away. She pulled back, studying his face. You want me to take it? I want you to be happy. I want you to have everything you deserve. His voice broke slightly. Even if it's not with me. The words hung between them, heavy with sacrifice and love and the terrible weight of choosing between heart and head. Outside, rain continued its relentless percussion against the windows, the city blurred and soft beyond the glass. What if I don't take the Harrison offer? She asked quietly. Then we figured out together. Build something new. Start our own firm. Maybe be partners in every sense of the word. That's terrifying. The best things usually are. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and full of a decision that surprised them both. He tasted like rain and possibility, like choices made from love instead of fear. When morning came, she made her decision, not just about the job offer, but about the man sleeping beside her. Her choice would shock everyone, including herself. What's worth risking everything for? When someone offers to give up their world for you, how do you know if it's love or possession? Share your thoughts on sacrifice in relationships. She had kept one thing sacred for 28 years, until the day she walked into a sterile office ready to trade it for her mother's life. Wait, that's not Imani's story. Let me tell you about the woman who changed everything by refusing to choose between 2 bad options. Instead of choosing between Carter's company and Harrison's offer, she created a third option that no one saw coming. Her own consulting firm, with both companies as clients and Carter as her first strategic partner. The Harrison partners sat across from her in their glass conference room. Contracts spread like promises across the mahogany table. "We're offering you everything Langley denied you," Marcus Harrison said, his smile sharp as winter. "Respect, recognition, triple the salary." Imani leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "What if I told you I had a better idea?" "I'm listening." "You want my expertise." "Carter needs my expertise. Why should I limit myself to one company when the market clearly values what I bring?" Her voice carried the authority of someone who'd finally remembered her worth. "I'm starting Morrison International Consulting. You'll be my first client. Langley Tower will be my second." The silence stretched until Marcus laughed. Not mockery, but genuine admiration. "You want to play both sides? I want to create my own side." 3 weeks later, her new office overlooked the financial district from the 20th floor. Modest compared to Carter's penthouse, but entirely hers. Every contract, every client, every success built on her terms and her expertise. Carter stood in her doorway, holding coffee, still getting used to scheduling appointments to see her. "How does it feel? Like I should have done this years ago." She gestured to the city beyond her windows. No more choosing between other people's options. He set the coffee on her desk, his fingers brushing hers. The simple touch sent electricity up her arm. Power was an aphrodisiac neither of them had expected. "The board's asking questions," he said. "Let them ask. I have 5 companies requesting proposals this week." She stood, moving to the window. "Including 2 of yours." He joined her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "Professional equals now. Is that a problem?" His hand found the small of her back. "It's the sexiest thing I've ever seen." She turned in his arms, office door still open, city watching through glass walls. "Mr. Langley, we have a meeting with the Jean Corporation in an hour." "Ms. Morrison," he murmured against her ear, "that gives us 59 minutes. Her breath caught as his lips found her neck. Outside, Los Angeles hummed with afternoon traffic, but inside her office, the only sound was her quiet gasp as his hands tangled in her hair. "Carter," his name came out breathless. "Tell me to stop." She pulled back, looking into his eyes. "Lock the door. Have you ever created your own path when the choices given weren't enough? When did you stop choosing between other people's options and make your own? Tell me about your entrepreneurial moment." The intercom buzzed just as Carter's mouth claimed hers. "Ms. Morrison, your 3 o'clock is here early." She broke the kiss, smoothing her blouse. "Send them to conference room B. We'll be right there." Carter straightened his tie, grinning. "To be continued, definitely." As they walked toward the conference room, professional masks sliding back into place, Imani felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Control, not just over her career or her body, but over her entire life. The feeling lasted exactly until Patricia Whitman showed up at her office the next morning. "Impressive setup," Patricia said, her voice honey over broken glass as she examined Imani's diplomas on the wall. "Though I have to wonder how long you think this little venture will last. Can I help you with something, Ms. Whitman?" Patricia smiled, settling into the chair across from Imani's desk without invitation. "I'm here with an offer. A very generous offer." She slid a folder across the desk. The number on the first page made Imani's breath catch. $5 million, Patricia said, "to close your doors and disappear. Permanently. You want to buy me out? I want to eliminate a problem before it becomes catastrophic." Patricia's mask slipped, revealing something cold underneath. "You've already done enough damage to my nephew's company. This is your chance to walk away rich." Imani closed the folder without looking at the terms. "Your nephew built his company on my expertise these past months. My nephew is thinking with the wrong head, and you know it." Patricia leaned forward. "Take the money, Ms. Morrison, because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman climbs from janitor to boardroom in 6 months." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Imani had faced down diplomats and CEOs, but Patricia Whitman carried the particular cruelty of someone who'd spent decades wielding power over others. "Is that all? Think about it." Patricia stood, smoothing her skirt. "Think about your daughter. Think about what happens when the media starts digging into how you really got where you are. When Patricia left, Imani sat alone in her office, staring at the folder. $5 million. Enough to secure Zara's future. Enough to disappear and start over somewhere else. Enough to let Patricia win. Her hands were steady as she opened her shredder and fed the contract through, piece by piece. The sound was satisfying, like breaking chains. When Carter appeared at her door 10 minutes later, she was standing at her window, watching the city that had tried to break her and failed. Patricia was here, she said without turning around. His footsteps stopped. What did she want? To buy my silence. She faced him, seeing the fear in his eyes. $5 million to close my business and disappear. Imani, I shredded it. Relief flooded his features, but something else flickered there too. Worry. She won't stop, he said quietly. Patricia doesn't accept no for an answer. Then she's about to learn something new. Imani moved to her desk, pulling out a different folder. Because the woman trying to destroy our love was the same woman who'd raised you after your parents died. And I just figured out how to prove she's been sabotaging you since the day you took over from your father. The color drained from Carter's face. What are you talking about? She opened the folder, spreading documents across her desk. Bank records, email printouts, contracts with signatures that didn't quite match. Your Aunt Patricia has been embezzling from Langley Tower for 3 years. Shell companies, inflated vendor contracts, kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. Her voice was clinical, professional. I found it all while researching your company's financial structure for our partnership agreement. Carter sank into the chair Patricia had vacated, staring at the evidence. This is impossible, is it? Think about every deal that went wrong. Every contract that fell through at the last minute. Every time you felt like someone was working against you from inside your own company. His hand shook as he picked up a bank statement. She raised me. After Mom and Dad died, she was all I had. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones willing to hurt you deepest. Imani's voice gentled. I'm sorry, Carter. I know what family betrayal feels like. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of broken trust and terrible revelation. What do we do? He asked finally. We fight back. When Patricia Whitman showed up at Imani's office with an offer to buy her out and destroy Carter's company, she realized the real battle was just beginning. Patricia's corporate warfare had one goal: destroy Carter's company and eliminate Imani's influence. But she underestimated what happens when a woman who's lost everything before refuses to be broken again. The first attack came at dawn. Imani's phone buzzed with news alerts, each one another knife twisted in her reputation. International fraud exposed, former diplomats' fake credentials. From Janitor to Jezebel, the real story behind Langley Tower's new consultant. Gold digger or genius? You decide. She sat on her couch in silk pajamas, coffee growing cold as she read lies presented as truth. Her ex-husband's accusations, resurrected and amplified. Photos of her cleaning floors alongside pictures of her in Carter's office. The captions suggesting things that made her stomach turn. Zara found her there an hour later, tablet in hand. Mom, kids at school are saying weird stuff about you. Imani's heart shattered. She'd survived public humiliation before, but watching it touch her daughter felt like drowning. What kind of weird stuff, baby? That you're only with Mr. Carter for his money. That you lied about being smart. Zara's 12-year-old eyes held confusion and hurt. They're wrong, right? Completely wrong. Imani pulled her daughter onto the couch, wrapping her arms around the most important thing in her world. Sometimes when people can't understand how someone succeeds, they make up mean stories to feel better about themselves. Are you going to fight back? The question hit like lightning. Here was her daughter, asking the same thing Imani had been asking herself since Patricia's declaration of war. Yes, she said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. Yes, I am. By noon, the attacks had escalated. Legal papers delivered to her office. Cease and desist orders claiming intellectual property theft. Threatening letters from law firms she'd never heard of. Carter appeared in her office looking like he'd been through a blender. They're going after the company too. Patricia convinced 3 board members that I'm compromised. They're calling for an emergency vote on my leadership. When? Friday. 3 days. Imani stood, pacing to her window. The city looked the same, but everything felt different. Like war had been declared, and civilians were choosing sides. "She's playing this perfectly," she said. "Attack me to weaken you. Attack you to isolate me. Make us fight separate battles so we can't support each other. What are you thinking?" She turned, decision crystallizing. "I'm thinking we stop playing defense." The courthouse steps buzzed with reporters as they walked hand in hand through the media storm the next morning. Imani held her head high despite the cameras. Carter's grip, steady despite the questions, shouted like accusations. "Ms. Morrison, is it true you falsified your credentials? Mr. Langley, are you stepping down as CEO? How do you respond to allegations of impropriety?" They didn't stop, didn't answer, didn't give the vultures what they wanted. Instead, they walked straight into the building where Patricia's lawyer waited with another stack of legal threats. That night, in Carter's penthouse, they spread documents across his dining table like battle plans. Financial records, employment files, communication logs. Everything they needed to expose Patricia's crimes. "She's been careful," Carter said, studying bank statements. "Most of this is circumstantial. Most isn't all." Imani highlighted a series of transactions. "These vendor payments? I cross-referenced them. Half these companies don't exist. The other half are owned by Patricia's college roommate." He looked up at her, admiration mixing with exhaustion. "How'd you find that?" "I speak 7 languages and know how to research financial crimes in 6 countries." Patricia forgot who she was fighting. The stress was getting to both of them. Carter's jaw stayed tight, his shoulders rigid with tension. Imani found herself snapping at small things, jumping at unexpected sounds. That night, they made love with desperate intensity. Not the playful passion of new lovers, but the fierce connection of 2 people under siege. His hands gripped her hips like anchors. Her nails left marks on his shoulders like claims of ownership. "Don't let them win," she whispered against his neck as they moved together. "Never," he promised, his voice rough with more than desire. But even in their most intimate moments, the war followed them. Her phone buzzed with threatening messages. His lit up with board members demanding explanations. When the world tries to tear down what you're building, how do you stand strong? Have you ever had to fight for your relationship against outside forces? Share your survival story. The breaking point came Thursday evening. Imani was working late when her building security called. "Ms. Morrison? There are reporters in the lobby asking about your daughter's school." Ice filled her veins. "What about her school?" "Something about her father's allegations from France. They're asking which private school she attends now." Imani was already grabbing her purse. "Call the police if they try to go up to any residential floors." She drove to Zara's school faster than safe, heart hammering against her ribs. Her daughter was in aftercare, safe but confused by the early pickup. "Mom? You look scared." "Just tired, baby. Let's go home." But home didn't feel safe anymore. Not with photographers camping outside her building. Not with Patricia's war machine grinding everything precious in her life between its teeth. She called Carter from her kitchen while Zara did homework in her room. They went after Zara's school. His silence stretched long enough that she wondered if the call had dropped. "Carter, I'm going to kill her." His voice was flat, deadly calm. "I'm actually going to kill Patricia." "No, you're not. Because we're going to destroy her legally, completely, and publicly." Imani's voice carried the authority of someone who'd made a final decision. "Tomorrow, at that board meeting, we're going to end this war. Out with the truth. All of it." She looked towards Zara's room, where her daughter sat safe and innocent, still believing the world was mostly fair, including the part about Patricia being your aunt and sabotaging you since your father's death. The silence stretched again. "That will destroy more than Patricia," he said finally. "That will destroy my family. Your family destroyed itself the day she chose greed over love." Imani's voice softened. "Sometimes you have to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right. Tomorrow, we choose right." The leaked document that arrived at midnight changed everything. Patricia's illegal attempt to sabotage Imani's business were documented in her own assistant's files. But using them would require Imani to trust Carter with the most painful details of why she'd learned never to trust anyone. Some truths cut deeper than lies. Like the day Imani finally told Carter why her ex-husband's betrayal left her cleaning floors instead of negotiating treaties, and why trusting him felt like stepping off a cliff. The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. Sender unknown. Subject line blank. Just an attachment labeled p.whitman_insurance_files.pdf. Imani opened it on her laptop while Carter showered, and what she found made her hands shake. Patricia's assistant had kept copies of everything. Emails discussing Imani's elimination. Plans to plant false stories in the media. Most damaging of all, wire transfer records showing payments to Imani's ex-husband in France. Antoine. She whispered the name like a curse. Carter emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, and found her staring at the screen. What is it? Patricia's been in contact with my ex-husband. She paid him $50,000 3 weeks ago. Her voice sounded hollow, distant. The same day those stories about my fake credentials hit the news. He sat beside her on the bed, reading over her shoulder. Jesus, she's been planning this for months. Longer. Imani scrolled through earlier emails. Look at this. She started researching me the day after our first dinner. Carter's jaw tightened as he read Patricia's words. Clinical discussions of Imani's weaknesses and pressure points. Plans to use her daughter as leverage. Conversations about neutralizing the threat she posed to family interests. She's not just trying to destroy your business, he said quietly. She's trying to destroy you. Imani closed the laptop, suddenly exhausted. She won't be the first. Tell me. His voice was gentle but firm. Tell me about France. About what really happened with your ex-husband. She'd avoided this conversation for months, deflecting his questions about her past with professional answers. But sitting here in his penthouse, surrounded by evidence of Patricia's cruelty, she realized the time for protection was over. I was the youngest cultural attaché in the embassy's history, she began, voice barely above a whisper. 26 years old, fluent in 5 languages, with a political science degree from Georgetown and a bright future ahead of me. Carter waited, not pushing, letting her find her rhythm. Antoine was older, sophisticated, a French businessman with government connections. He swept me off my feet with fancy dinners and weekend trips to Provence. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was so worldly, so smart. I had no idea I was being played. What happened? He proposed after 6 months. I said yes because I was young and thought love was supposed to feel like drowning. Her apartment filled with memories, none of them good. The problem started right after our wedding. He wanted me to quit my job, said a wife shouldn't work. When I refused, he began undermining me at every turn. She stood, pacing to the window. Los Angeles glittered below, a city that had given her chances to rebuild. He spread rumors at embassy parties, questioned my competence in front of my colleagues, made jokes about my background, my education, my qualifications. The words came faster now, like poison finally being drained from a wound. When that didn't work, he escalated. Ow! Financial sabotage. He had access to my accounts, my credit, my professional reputation. He destroyed contracts I negotiated, leaked confidential information, made it look like I was selling state secrets. Her reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. By the time I realized what was happening, my career was over. No one would hire me. No one would believe me. Carter's hands found her shoulders, solid and warm. How did you get out? I ran. Middle of the night, one suitcase, pregnant with Zara. She leaned back against his chest. I chose my daughter over everything else. My career, my reputation, my chance to fight back. I came home with nothing. Not nothing. You came home with her and spent the next 12 years cleaning office buildings to keep us alive. She turned in his arms. So when Patricia threatens to destroy me, when she pays my ex-husband to spread more lies, it's not just business. It's personal. It's every nightmare I've been running from. His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize were falling. She won't win. How can you be sure? Because you're not the same woman who ran from France. You're not broken or desperate or alone. His eyes held certainty that made her chest tight. You're Imani Morrison, and you build your own goddamn empire. The kiss that followed tasted like salt and promises. Not desperate this time, but determined. She led him to the bed, her hands sure as she pushed him down, straddled his hips. "I need you to know," she said, hands flat on his chest, "that trusting you with this story is the scariest thing I've done in years." "Why?" "Because the last man I told everything to used it to destroy me." She moved against him, slow and deliberate. "But I'd rather risk destruction than keep hiding." He sat up, arms around her waist, forehead against hers. "I'm not him. Prove it." What followed was less about passion than about claiming. Her claiming her right to vulnerability. Him claiming his responsibility to protect what she offered. Both of them claiming their future against anyone who tried to tear it down. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled like sex and determination. Her head on his shoulder, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare back. "The board meeting is in 8 hours, he said. "Are you ready? Are you? Because using this evidence means telling everyone about Patricia being my aunt. About the family betrayal." His voice carried weight. "You'll be dragged through the mud again. The media will say you're a homewrecker, a manipulator, a woman who destroys families." She lifted her head, looking into his eyes. "Let them. I'm done running from other people's lies. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." She smiled, and for the first time in days, it reached her eyes. "Besides, I've got something Patricia doesn't." "What's that?" "The truth. And a man who loves me enough to fight beside me instead of in front of me." When someone earns your complete trust after betrayal, what does that feel like? How do you know when it's safe to be fully vulnerable again? Share your trust journey. The sun rose over Los Angeles like a promise, painting Carter's penthouse in shades of gold and possibility. Imani stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up. Today, she would walk into that boardroom and face Patricia Whitman's final assault. She would tell the truth about family betrayal and corporate crime. She would risk everything she'd rebuilt on the chance that justice still mattered. "Ready?" Carter asked, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the window. She turned, seeing him clearly. Not the arrogant CEO who'd thrown papers at her like trash, but the man who'd held her while she cried, who'd listened to her story without judgment, who'd chosen her over family loyalty. "I'm ready." As they prepared to expose Patricia's crimes, Carter's final revelation stopped her cold. "There's something else you need to know. Patricia isn't just trying to destroy my company. She's my aunt, and she's been sabotaging me since the day I took over from my father." The woman trying to destroy their love was the same woman who'd raised Carter after his parents died, proving that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones willing to hurt you deepest. The boardroom at Langley Tower felt different at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning. Not like the place where Imani had once been invisible, mopping floors while powerful people made decisions. Today, she walked through those mahogany doors wearing her best suit and carrying evidence that would change everything. Patricia sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court. Silver hair perfect, navy suit immaculate, hands folded over documents that promised Carter's destruction. She looked up when they entered, her smile sharp as winter. "Carter, Ms. Morrison." Her voice dripped honey over broken glass. "I'm surprised you brought your consultant to a family meeting." "This isn't family business," Carter said, taking his seat across from her. "This is corporate crime." The other board members shifted uncomfortably. These were men who'd known Carter since he was a child, who'd watched Patricia guide the company after his father's death. They weren't prepared for war. "Let's begin," Patricia said, ignoring his accusation. "Gentlemen, I've called this emergency session because our CEO has compromised company integrity. His relationship with Ms. Morrison represents a clear conflict of interest and potential liability." She opened a folder, spreading photographs across the table. Pictures of Carter and Imani at dinner, at her apartment building, entering his penthouse. Intimate moments stolen by telephoto lenses and presented like evidence of crime. Furthermore, Patricia continued, Ms. Morrison's employment history contains numerous discrepancies. Her consulting business appears to be fraudulent. Her credentials questionable at best. Board member Jonathan Mills cleared his throat. "Patricia, these are serious allegations. Serious times call for serious measures. Patricia's eyes never left Carter's face. I'm requesting a vote of no confidence in our current leadership. The silence stretched like a hell breath. These men had built their fortunes alongside Carter's father, had watched Carter grow the company beyond anything they'd imagined. But Patricia was family. Blood. The woman who'd saved the company when grief nearly destroyed it. Carter stood slowly, his face calm despite the storm Imani could see building behind his eyes. Before you vote, there's something you need to know about the woman requesting my removal. He nodded to Imani, who opened her laptop. The projector screen filled with bank records, wire transfers, shell company documents. For 3 years, Patricia Whitman has been embezzling from this company. Carter's voice carried the authority of someone who'd finally stopped trying to protect people who didn't deserve it. Shell companies inflated vendor contracts, kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. The board members leaned forward, studying the evidence. Numbers that didn't lie, patterns that couldn't be explained away. "This is preposterous," Patricia said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "Computer files can be fabricated, not federal banking records." Imani stood, moving to the projector. These transactions were flagged by the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I have copies of their preliminary investigation. The room went silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of Los Angeles traffic 47 floors below. "You've stolen over $12 million from your own family's company," Carter said, his voice breaking slightly. "The company my father trusted you to protect." Patricia's mask finally slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. "Your father was weak, sentimental. He would have run this company into the ground with his bleeding heart policies. So you decided to steal it instead?" "I decided to save it." Patricia's voice rose, control fracturing. "Do you think success comes from playing nice? From hiring janitors because they speak foreign languages? From letting emotions cloud business judgment?" Her gaze fixed on Imani like a laser sight. "This woman has made you weak, just like your father. Soft, compromised." The boardroom where Imani was once humiliated became her stage for vindication as she presented evidence with the precision of the diplomat she'd always been. "Let me tell you about compromise, Ms. Whitman." Imani's voice cut through Patricia's rage like steel. "You paid my ex-husband $50,000 to spread lies about me. You hired private investigators to follow my 12-year-old daughter. You threatened my business, my reputation, and my family." She clicked to the next slide. "Email screenshots, bank records, phone logs. You've been planning my destruction since the day Carter first defended me. Not because I'm unqualified or fraudulent, but because I represent something you can't understand or control. And what's that? Love without transaction. Success without stepping on others. Power that lifts instead of crushes." Imani stepped closer to Patricia's chair. "Everything you've never been." The silence that followed felt like the moment before an avalanche. Patricia's perfectly composed facade cracked, revealing decades of bitterness and rage. "You think you've won?" she whispered. "You think exposing me changes anything? You're still a cleaning lady who got lucky. Still a nobody from Detroit who spread her legs for a rich man." Carter was out of his chair before the words finished echoing. "Don't you ever." "It's okay." Imani's hand on his arm stopped him. "She's already lost." She was right. The board members sat in stunned silence, looking at Patricia like they'd never seen her before. Jonathan Mills spoke first. "Patricia, these allegations, if they're true, they're not allegations," she said quietly. "They're confessions. You heard her admit to paying my ex-husband, threatening my child, hiring investigators." Her smile was sad but victorious. "Everything else is just details." The vote was unanimous. Patricia's resignation, effective immediately. Carter's leadership confirmed. Police notified about the embezzlement. But victory felt hollow as they watched security escort Patricia from the building. She'd raised Carter after his parents died, taught him about business, been the closest thing to a mother he'd had for 20 years. "I'm sorry," Imani said as they stood alone in the boardroom afterward. "For what?" "For being the reason you had to choose between family and truth." He turned to her, exhaustion and relief warring on his face. You weren't the reason. You were just the catalyst for showing me who she really was. Still, no. His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Some family is blood. Some family is choice. Today I chose. The kiss that followed tasted like endings and beginnings. Like justice served and futures claimed. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? When blood relatives become your biggest obstacles. Tell me about your most difficult family decision. Later that afternoon, as they cleaned up the evidence and prepared for the media storm that would follow, Carter made an offer that surprised them both. Be my partner, not just in love, in business. Help me rebuild this company the right way. Imani looked around the boardroom where she'd once been nothing, where she'd been humiliated and dismissed, where she'd finally found her voice again. Co-CEO, equal partners in everything. His smile was exhausted but genuine. Morrison Langley International. What do you think? With Patricia's resignation and the board's apology, Carter turned to Imani with an offer that would change everything again. Be my partner. Not just in love, in business. Help me rebuild this company the right way. 2 years later, she stood in the same boardroom where she was once invisible, but now her nameplate read Chief Operating Officer, and the international contracts bore her signature alongside his. The new Morrison Langley International building rose into the Los Angeles sky like a monument to possibility. Glass and steel reaching toward horizons that once seemed impossible. Her vision and his resources creating something neither could have built alone. Imani stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching the city that had tried to break her and failed. 52 floors below, people moved through their Friday afternoon lives, most of them unaware that the woman they might have ignored 2 years ago now influenced billion-dollar deals across 6 continents. Mrs. Langley? Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your 3 o'clock is here. Send him in, Maria. And it's still Morrison Langley, remember? Of course. Saw the door opened to admit a young woman in a wrinkled suit, portfolio clutched in nervous hands. African, by her accent when she introduced herself. Ethiopian, if Imani's ear for languages was right. Ms. Morrison Langley, thank you for seeing me. I am Hainentadis. I have a proposal for your International Development Fund. Imani gestured to the seating area by the windows, away from the imposing desk. Please call me Imani. Coffee. Yes, thank you. As Maria brought coffee, Imani studied the young woman. 25, maybe 26. Intelligent eyes, calloused hands, the particular blend of hope and desperation she recognized in the mirror from 2 years ago. Tell me about your proposal. It's a microfinance program for refugee women in LA. Small business loans, financial literacy training, mentorship. Hanan's voice grew stronger as she talked about her passion. Most of these women were professionals in their home countries. Doctors, teachers, engineers. But here, they clean offices and serve food because no one recognizes their skills. The irony wasn't lost on Imani. She poured coffee, remembering another woman who'd cleaned offices while carrying advanced degrees in her head. What makes you think I'd be interested? Because you understand. Hanan's eyes met hers directly. Everyone knows your story. The janitor who became a CEO, the woman who proved that worth isn't determined by circumstances. And what's your story? I was a civil engineer in Addis Ababa. Built bridges, managed construction projects, supervised teams of 50 men. Hanan's voice carried pride and loss in equal measure. Then the political situation changed. I fled with nothing but my daughter and the clothes on our backs. How old is your daughter? 14. She's why I need this to work. Hanan leaned forward. She's brilliant, like you probably were at her age. But she's watching her mother serve coffee to men who wouldn't have been qualified to carry my blueprints back home. I need her to see that this isn't the end of our story. Imani felt something shift in her chest. The same feeling she'd had when Carter first offered her the chance to use her mind instead of hiding it. How much are you requesting? 500,000 to start. I know it sounds like a lot, but it sounds like exactly the right amount. Imani smiled at the younger woman's shocked expression. I'll have our legal team draw up the paperwork. Just like that, Not just like that. You'll have monthly check-ins, quarterly reviews, and you'll report directly to me. Her voice carried the authority she'd earned through years of proving herself. I don't just write checks, Hanan. I build partnerships. After Hanan left, practically floating with excitement, Imani returned to her desk. The afternoon sun painted her office in gold, illuminating framed photographs that told the story of her transformation. Zara at graduation from private school, Carter at their wedding, the two of them breaking ground on the Morrison Langley Community Center in Detroit. Her intercom buzzed. "Your husband is here. Send him in." Carter entered carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing the grin that still made her pulse quicken. "Celebrating already? The Ethiopian project is approved. 500,000 to start." She stood, accepting his kiss. "What are we celebrating?" The Singapore deal closed. $15 billion in infrastructure development across Southeast Asia. He set the champagne on her desk. "Your negotiation strategy was flawless." "Our negotiation strategy. Fine. Our strategy." His arms circled her waist. "Equal partners in everything, remember?" She did remember. The wedding 2 years ago, small ceremony on the rooftop of their building. Her in simple white silk that made her skin glow, him in a navy suit that brought out his eyes. Zara as maid of honor, beaming with pride at her mother's happiness. "I have something else to celebrate," she said, stepping back to study his face. "Another deal? A different kind of merger." Her hand moved to her still flat stomach. "We're gonna need a bigger office." The champagne bottle slipped from his fingers, caught at the last second by reflexes that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with protecting what mattered. "Are you?" 12 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Her smile was radiant, transformative. "Dr. Martinez says everything looks perfect." He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around the office where she'd built her empire. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "A baby, our baby, created by choice, not desperation, planned and wanted and already so loved." The kiss that followed was soft, reverent, full of promises about the future they were building together. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Boy or girl? Too early to tell, but healthy and strong, according to the doctor." She laughed, the sound bright in the golden afternoon light. Just like their parents. They made love that evening in their penthouse. The same space where she'd once run from vulnerability and he'd learned to see past his privilege. But everything was different now. Equal partners in bed as in business, giving and taking with the confidence of people who'd fought for their right to love each other. He worshipped her body with newfound reverence, hands gentle on the place where their child grew. She moved above him with the grace of someone who'd claimed her power completely, taking her pleasure as surely as she took her place in boardrooms across the world. "I love you," he whispered against her neck as they moved together. "I love you too. All of you. All of us." Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled like home and happiness, her head on his shoulder, his hand protective over her belly. "What would you have done differently?" he asked. "If you could go back to that night when I threw the folder at you?" She considered the question seriously. "Nothing. Every humiliation, every struggle, every moment of doubt led us here. Led us to this." Her hand covered his on her stomach. "I wouldn't change a single painful step if it meant losing this ending." "It's not an ending," he corrected. "It's a beginning." 6 months later, the nursery walls glowed soft yellow in the morning light, hand-painted clouds drifting across a sky that held infinite possibility. Not fairy tale perfection, but real hope built on real love. Imani stood at the window, 8 months pregnant and glowing with health, watching Los Angeles wake up below them. The same city that had seen her broken and desperate now witnessed her triumph. "Ready for the board meeting?" Carter asked, adjusting his tie in the nursery mirror. "Ready." She smoothed her maternity dress, custom-tailored to maintain her professional authority even as her body prepared for motherhood. "Though I still think it's crazy that we're announcing the London expansion on my due date. The London expansion can wait. This can't." His hands spanned her belly, feeling the baby's restless movements. "Besides, You're the one who insisted on working until labor starts. I'm not fragile. No, he agreed, kissing her temple. You're magnificent. The boardroom at Morrison Langley International buzzed with controlled energy as they presented their 5-year plan. Offices in 12 countries, partnerships with local businesses, development funds focused on lifting entire communities. The Refugee Entrepreneur Program has exceeded all projections, Imani reported, standing at the head of the table where Patricia once sat. We've funded 300 small businesses, created over 2,000 jobs, and seen a 93% success rate. Jonathan Mills, now their most trusted board member, smiled with genuine warmth. Remarkable work, both of you. Thank you. But this is just the beginning. Carter advanced to the next slide. We're proposing similar programs in 15 additional cities, focusing on overlooked populations with untapped potential. The presentation continued for another hour, but Imani's attention drifted as the baby kicked insistently against her ribs. Not pain, but urgency. A reminder that some timelines couldn't be negotiated. After the meeting, as they rode the elevator to their executive floor, she felt the first real contraction. Carter, what? I think our daughter has opinions about our scheduling. His eyes widened as understanding hit. Now, soon. Another contraction, stronger this time. Very soon. The next 12 hours blurred together in a mix of pain and anticipation. Carter's steady presence and medical professionals who treated her like the powerful woman she'd become, not just another patient. When their daughter finally arrived, healthy, perfect, loud with indignation at the brightness of the world, Imani held her with hands that had once scrubbed floors and now signed international treaties. She's beautiful, Carter whispered, tears streaming down his face. She's ours. Imani's voice was rough with exhaustion and joy. Really ours. They named her Grace. Grace Morrison Langley. A name that honored the elegance her mother had found in survival and the strength her father had learned through humility. So what would you do if someone saw your worth before you remembered it yourself? Would you take the risk? Would you build something beautiful with them? Comment below with what you would have done in her shoes. As Imani nursed her daughter in the quiet hospital room, Carter sleeping in the chair beside them, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. From invisible janitor to equal partner. From desperate single mother to confident CEO. From a woman who'd forgotten her worth to one who helped others remember theirs. The cleaning lady who'd once mopped floors 47 stories below now owned the building. The woman who'd been dismissed as gold-digging trash had built an empire based on lifting others up. The single mother who'd feared for her daughter's future had created a legacy that would impact generations. If this story of love, power, and recognition moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to stay small when the world tries to shrink them. Tell me in the comments which moment resonated most with you. And remember, your worth isn't determined by your current circumstances, but by the strength you carry through them all. Outside the hospital window, Los Angeles glittered with possibility. Somewhere in that sprawling city, another brilliant woman was probably cleaning offices, hiding her talents, waiting for someone to see past her circumstances to her potential. Tomorrow, Imani would return to her office and continue the work of finding those women, funding their dreams, proving that worth had nothing to do with wealth and everything to do with courage. But tonight, she held her daughter close and whispered the words every child deserved to hear. You are valuable. You are powerful. You are enough, exactly as you are. Grace Morrison Langley opened her eyes as if she understood, dark gaze serious and steady. Already, she looked like someone who would never accept less than she deserved. Already, she looked like her mother's daughter. The woman who'd once offered her body to save her mother's life, now cradled new life created by choice and celebrated by love. Full circle, but spiraling upward, always reaching for heights that seemed impossible until they became inevitable. Some stories end with rescue, others with recognition. The best ones end with revolution, the quiet kind that changes everything by refusing to accept that things can't change. This was that kind of story. This was that kind of love. This was that kind of woman. And this was only the beginning.